Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Happily Ever After Hours podcast. My name is Colton Simmons, and I am your host. Today I have with me Cady Arruda of Homegrown Blooms. Welcome, Cady.
Hi, Colton. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's been so awesome to be able to work alongside you in the industry, and I feel like you have a lot of valuable insight, especially on today's topic. So, before we jump into today's topic, which is how you dealt with the complexities of sourcing your flowers and running your business amidst a global pandemic, uh, I would love for you to just maybe take the next like 5-10 minutes to introduce yourself, explain your story, and how Homegrown Blooms came to be.
Yeah, awesome. So like Colton said, my name's Cady. I'm the owner of Homegrown Blooms, and I started this company, officially opened in 2017, but long before I even opened the company, I had always grown up really loving art and design. I was always doing art projects, doing anything creative that I could. But I also grew up working on farms wherever I could. I worked on dairy farms, horse farms, vegetable farms, flower farms. So I loved being outside. I loved working with my hands. But as I got older, I always thought, I went to a college prep high school, and I just thought I had to pick a career that made sense and was going to make a good income because growing up on farms, I was like, I want a farm someday. So I decided to major in architecture. And as I got closer to go time and like applying for schools, I was applying for architecture. I was like working really hard, taking a bunch of classes to for college prep. And then I decided like at the last minute, I was like, you know what? I'm so passionate about agriculture. I really like want to work in this field. I don't think I can sit behind a desk and do math all day. I'm just like not that person. So I decided to switch my major from architecture to agriculture. And everyone was kind of like, what are you doing? But I'm glad that I did because it led me to Homegrown Blooms. So, in my pursuit of the sustainable agriculture degree, I actually took an internship my sophomore year down in Florida. So, this was in 2016. And I lived on a farm down in Florida, and learned everything there was about like living off the land. We had vegetables, animals, all kinds of stuff. But I was also introduced to flower farming down here. And it was it was like my two worlds combined because I actually got to grow flowers and get my hands dirty during the week and like grow all these really cool varieties. And as a creative person, as an artist, I got to design with the very items that I was growing. Um, and that was so cool to me because it wasn't just like your traditional flowers that you see at the grocery store or a traditional florist shop. It was like these really cool varieties and really cool textures and colors and scents. So designing with that was just so much fun. I felt really passionate about it right away. I had a great mentor, my boss, Mariana, on Swallowtail Farm. She taught me so much in 2016. So I actually decided when I moved back home from Florida to open my own company. I started it very small. It was out of my parents'
Yeah.
garage. Um, and it just started like I grew flowers in their backyard. I still worked as a nanny. I was still taking online classes. I was um, renting land to grow more flowers on in a couple different spots. So I was everywhere, and I really took the leap to go full time in 2017. And I'm really glad that I did because, like I said, like especially working in the wedding industry, which I started to down in Florida, and there's a lot of different worlds you can go into when you're working with flowers. I could have just been a grower. I could have just been a traditional flower shop that you come in, get an arrangement, walk out. There's florists that specialize in funeral flowers, deliveries, all that type of stuff. But I'm just a romantic, and I love wedding deliveries. I love like meeting a client a year before and them telling me about what their visions are and their dreams are, and making that happen, working with the season, working with their venue. I like a challenge. So yeah, over the years it's been really fun, and the business has grown, our team's grown. We're doing a lot more growing in our greenhouses, in the field behind our studio, and we're learning a lot with designing too. That's one of the things, like a lot of people ask me if I have a background in floral design, and I really didn't. I kind of just taught myself. Like I
Yeah.
said, it was so much fun to work with these really cool varieties that we were growing on the farm, and what better way to know the varieties than actually grow them? Like I knew how long they could last in and out of water. I knew, you know, if the pollen was going to stain a dress. I knew these flowers in and out just because, you know, I had been working with them since the minute I planted the seed, which sometimes is, you know, months before we're even harvesting and designing with them. Um, so yeah, I still have a lot to learn, but I've learned a lot over the years and super fortunate to work in an industry where I get to work with awesome couples and awesome vendors at beautiful venues and really bring couples' visions to life.
Yeah, and I can definitely speak and attest to your ability to do that because it brings me back a few weeks ago to when you dropped off Joyce's bouquet and she literally was brought to tears because you brought her vision to life. And, you know, I've never seen a bouquet that big in my entire life either. So I can imagine why she was so like blown away because that was a work of art. So
Oh,
to go back a little bit, you were working at the farm in Florida before you came back home. Was her farm a farm that also worked weddings? Is that where you first got your dip into toe? Because you said you would design on the weekend, but were you just designing regular like florals, or was she, you know, growing during the week, selling her produce during the week, but then also the floral stuff was going to then wedding venues out in Florida?
yeah, so good question because actually it's really funny. Like I said, this farm, we did vegetables, we did animals, and flowers was always like the thing at the end of the day if we had time for it. And I was so excited about it that I would, you know, at that farm, we were waking up at sometimes 4 o'clock in the morning if you were on animal chores and you were working
Yeah.
outside in the Florida heat all day. So a lot of the other interns like didn't really want to work an extra hour or two with the flowers because the whole American grown flower industry, it didn't really kick off until like 2016. Like it was starting this like revolution was starting as I was working on this farm. So um all of Mariana's ideas, I she was kind of on a tier under the big boss of the farm, and I think even the big boss was like, "Okay, flowers can wait because we have to take care of all the animals and we have to harvest all of our vegetables for our 170 person vegetable CSA." And
Yeah.
it was always just like flowers are for the end of the day or flowers are just for fun. And I think Mariana really saw like how passionate I was and how passionate, of course, she was, and she saw that, you know, there was just not only like money in the industry, there was just a lot of different directions to go. Um, it was kind of like you're skipping the middleman when it comes to a traditional flower shop. They're ordering their flowers in from a wholesaler, and you have to, you know, order in advance, wait for them to ship overseas for a week or two. They're just not as fresh, not as you don't have as many options when it comes to colors and tones and varieties. So when you're actually growing the varieties yourself, and you're skipping that middleman, you're not having to pay for something to come overseas and for a week or two, and sometimes you don't even know shipments can be delayed. Certain varieties seasons can end early or later. There's just a lot more, I guess, uncontrollable when it comes to more of that traditional style.
Yeah.
There's plenty uncontrollable when it comes to flower farming itself, obviously, like climate, all of those things that have to do with growing flowers and agriculture. It's not a walk in the park, but it's something that I think anyone that works in the agriculture industry can just agree if you have that like passion for it, even if it is a lot of work and you're working out in crazy climates and sometimes you grow a crop and the whole thing dies. There's something about it that like you want the challenge, you want to keep going back for more, and like you figure out how to make it work, whether it's, you know, animals, vegetables, flowers, whatever it may be.
Definitely. So that kind of probably kind of curtails into your whole, you know, naming. You guys are called Homegrown Blooms. So although there is a portion of your business that does need to be outsourced to wholesalers, you try to grow the majority of your flowers in house.
Yeah, so like I said, when I first started, I grew out of my parents' backyard. I was renting land from some of the farms that I worked at the time. And as I booked bigger weddings and I needed to grow more and more, I started looking for a studio, which I moved into my studio 3 years ago. And at the studio that I work at now, I have a field in the back that I can grow at, and I also have greenhouses and more growing land in Tiverton, which it's Rhode Island, but it's actually right down the road from our studio in Westport. It's like a 10-minute
Nice.
drive.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So the main topic of today's episode is dealing with adversity, especially during a pandemic, which you dealt with a lot. I remember chatting with you a bit about just like how you were getting certain flowers, because obviously growing your own flowers is great, but when it comes to running 3 events in a weekend, you can't rely on, you'd have to have like acres and acres and acres of flowers to be able to meet the
Yeah.
demand of all of the weddings you have. So there is a portion of your business that you outsource to wholesalers. So could you describe your business model prior to the pandemic, and then in particularly just like the sourcing of flowers and all of that?
Yeah. So prior to the pandemic, seems like ages ago now, but I mean, ordering, I had a few wholesaler reps from different companies. I always like to have a few different wholesale accounts just in case, anything ever happens with one. Sometimes there's just shortages and there's nothing you can do. So you go to the next person. Um, so I used to order flowers for events 2 weeks before events, which seems crazy now because post pandemic, I'm ordering like 4 weeks before a wedding, and even that is sometimes like cutting it close. Um, so yeah, I would always just have my schedule. A pen and paper type of person. I would just have it written down 2 weeks before the wedding. Order so and so's flowers. Order so and so's vases. I would start prepping and ordering for the events, like pen and paper, whiteboard. I would write everything down in a whiteboard in my studio. Um, I would print out a list, and that's kind of how I did things. And whatever I was going to grow, I usually met with clients a year in advance. So I would, get those seeds, grow whatever I could, specialize like for their wedding, but certain varieties, especially like roses, eucalyptus, hydrangeas, if it's a certain time of season. Um, those are just things that I can't grow all season. I get like certain flushes of them throughout the year, but um, those are very popular wedding flowers. So those are ones that I'm usually ordering in on a weekly basis. Um, so yeah, I would try to put those orders in like 2 weeks in advance and kind of just have my checklist. But now the checklist is a lot more extensive and it's a lot more. I put it in a lot more in advance just because, as you know, with after COVID, I mean, even flowers, vases, any type of materials, there was just so many back orders, and you could order something a couple months in advance and it still just wasn't going to be there on time,
Yeah,
which
I
is
mean, I'm getting into the photo booth business right now, and trying to get printers is like it's like insane, and people are marking them up and selling their used printers for like $400 more than what the ticket value is, because I guess the town that the most popular photo booth printer is made in China, it was zero COVID. Like you couldn't have COVID, and if you had COVID, the factory would shut down for 60 days. So they would have periods of that where just like there was no printers being made for months and months at a time. But now I guess it's shifted to like a COVID tolerant situation there. So now you're kind of able to. If somebody has COVID, they just kind of quarantine the people rather than shut down the whole factory. So definitely
yeah,
understanding that going into a new market in the wedding industry. So before we jump a little bit into like post pandemic and how you're handling things now, when things first happened, it's 2020, March 2020, the world's kind of shutting down. How did the pandemic initially impact your business? Because as a florist, even if there were smaller events being held, you were still a part of that because, you know, you didn't have to physically be there. But at the same time, they still needed florals if there was even going to be like a 10 or 15 or a 20-person wedding, whatever the regulations were changing throughout the time period. How did that initially impact you, because everything shut down and these wholesalers that you were doing business with 2 weeks in advance were probably not even in operation or at a limited capacity if they were in operation?
yeah, no, absolutely. Um, well, when I fir- when the outbreak of COVID happened, um, it was actually when I had just mentioned I was moving into my new studio. So I was finally taking the leap and like going full out in Homegrown Blooms. And, I wanted more overhead. I needed more coolers, more studio space. That's when COVID happened, and I had to make a decision whether to actually like go through and sign the new lease, or kind of crawl into a hole and just cry because I was getting emails every single day that were like, our wedding's canceled or our wedding's rescheduled. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I was just like, oh my gosh, my entire business relies on these weddings. Like, sure, I do deliveries here and there, smaller events, but weddings is like my main income. So, even though I was really scared, I was just like, you know what, we're gonna figure this out. I'm gonna jump in full force, and we're gonna figure it out. So I did, and that's really when I kind of went back to my roots and started to grow as many flowers as I could. I was like, okay, if I have a little bit more time in the week now because I'm not designing for as many weddings, I'm going to be taking courses online for growing flowers on small scale. I want to know what flowers I can grow, what flowers I can't, because, you know, reaching out to wholesalers and asking for 100 white roses for an event in a couple weeks and them saying, white roses are either unavailable or they're $5 a stem. Like, the inflation was just crazy. And it was for varieties that, of course, everybody wanted. So I had to have a lot of conversations with my clients and talk about ways to still bring the vision to life, with substituting some varieties. And, that was scary because I never want clients to feel like their vision is compromised. But in the face of challenges through a pandemic and all these crazy, not just flowers, it was vases, it was all kinds of supplies and all kinds of varieties that were just, it was heartbreaking. I was like, I'm so sorry I can't get this certain variety in for you. I'm going to try as hard as I can, but if I can't get this in, how do you feel about like Lysianthus is a variety that we grow at the farm, and it's white, it looks like a rose, and I have actually a lot of clients that like it better than roses at this point because they're like, roses look so traditional, like we want
Yeah.
something, unique and beautiful.
And
And
that's something too about your work. You've always had a very unique and like forward thinking design, where back when we first started working together, the traditional like roses and typical flowers, and whenever I would see your bouquets, you have like dahlias and like all these crazy pops of colors, and I'm like, man, like I'm getting her on my preferred vendor list ASAP. And I'm always like preaching you to, every couple that books, like make sure you reach out to Cady. So definitely love your outside of the box thinking, which I can imagine is what kept you not only afloat but growing through the pandemic.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, and it all depends on, there are some clients that aren't looking for out of the box, but as we've grown, we've really like made a name for ourselves in that kind of world. So that's what we're working with a lot, which is really nice for me because as a creative, I tell people a million times, I'm like, I can have the same color palette, I can have the same venue, same time of year, but every single couple is different, and I really want the flowers to represent, their personalities, and I want guests to be able to sit down and say, oh my gosh, like I've never seen this before, or oh, this smells so lovely, or just flowers for your wedding day. It's supposed to be, it's one of the only days you're using flowers as like a decoration piece and something to express your love and your personalities, and um bring that vision to life. So I know how important it can be, and that's why it was so heartbreaking when COVID broke out and people lost their venues. And I remember this one, I'll tell this story really quick. I remember I had this one wedding that the bride and groom were really looking forward to their venue, and they were so excited about it, and the venue shut down through COVID. And the bride reached out and said, we're going to do a wedding in my fiance's backyard instead. She wasn't too excited about this. And I was like, you know what? Let's think of some really cool ideas to make you excited about this, because, now you can put a little more of the budget into flowers, and I can save you a little bit of the budget if you want to use more of the flowers that I can grow for you. So I showed her all these new varieties. I remember coming up with this idea, like there was this big tree in the yard, and I was like, what if we hung flowers from the tree and you did the ceremony here instead? And she was like, oh my gosh, I love that. And it ended
Yeah.
up being like even better than the venue. She was like, this space just like came to life with flowers, and it just made me so happy. And there's other examples of how we kind of, especially during COVID and outdoor weddings or tent weddings, we tried to just like really bring the space to life. Because it was disappointing to hear clients that you grow close to go through, go through COVID, planning a wedding during COVID. I was just heartbroken for so many. I remember phone calls where clients were crying to me, and I was like, we're gonna figure this out. We're gonna come up with cool ideas. We're gonna make it work. Um, and yeah, it was really rewarding to get through it and bring those ideas and visions to life, wherever their wedding was hosted, or even some elopements. We did like so many cool bouquets, like just bridal bouquets for elopements, like on a mountain or by the beach. And it was just, I don't know, for me, it was really creative. And I got to, actually, for some clients, I got to do their wedding twice because they would do like one mini ceremony or an
Yeah.
elopement, and they would want, say it was a client that just wanted whites and greens, something more classic. They were like, you know what, we're getting married twice now, so you do whatever you think's gonna look good, like pops of color. We want it to be fun. So that was really fun.
Nice. Yeah. So with all that, was there anything that you had to do to adjust your sourcing methods? Were there like distributors that shut down, and new distributors that you discovered because they were just more reliable during that time period? Because although you had moved to that model of using most of your stuff at home, I can imagine like still you're running into these barriers where you're, trying to keep a business afloat now that you have an area where you have a storefront. So what were
Yeah.
some of the ways that you changed like distribution and things of that nature?
Yeah. So I have to say, I think the floral industry as a whole, everybody was freaking out whether you owned your own florist company or you're a representative from a bigger wholesale company, or you know you worked behind the scenes on a farm and you were,
Hmm.
um, a wholesaler through a farm. I think everyone was just kind of very supportive, and I know a few of my wholesale accounts. One is out of the Floral Reserve in Providence, and the owner has just been, I mean, I got an account with her when I first opened because I was really excited that she actually didn't just order in from these, accounts from Ecuador and Colombia, like where they're growing on a very large scale, stuff like roses, hydrangeas, tulips, all of those flowers that they're just shipping over in a very large scale. Um, she actually gets a lot of her stuff from local farmers as well. And even when it
Nice.
comes to roses, she's getting a lot of stuff from California. So it's still American grown. Um, you don't have to worry as much about the shipping delays when it's
Hmm.
from America. During COVID, like the shipping delays from overseas were one of the biggest problems, especially because a lot of those farms, um, I remember Labor Day weekend, like a white rose, you could not find one anywhere, and if you could, it was like $3 to $5 a stem wholesale. So retail price was absolutely insane. Um, and I remember just like going to grocery stores looking to see if I could just find them there because all of my wholesalers, I reached out to at least four different wholesalers for white roses for Labor Day weekend, and they had nothing for me. So,
Wow.
yeah, that was scary because that was, around the time, like I said, I was starting to order 4 weeks in advance. And when you're ordering these flowers 4 weeks in advance and they're still either not available or their price changed from, a dollar a stem or 50 cents a stem to $3 a stem, there's a big change there, especially when you're working off of your initial invoice and your quote. And one of my biggest things was I didn't want to put more stress on my clients. I didn't want to say, okay, like you have to pay more now. Sorry. Like I wanted to still stick to my initial quote. And there were so many clients that I already had to reschedule. And one of
Hmm.
the scary things was when they were rescheduling, I was already booked for the year after. So
Yeah.
now I started to get double book dates, triple book dates, and the company was still really small. So that's when I started, hiring a bigger team of people just as passionate as I am, and they got me through because some of those like double, triple delivery days, um, I was honest with my clients. I was like, listen, your deposit stays like you gave this to me. Sometimes it was like 2, 3 years ago at this point, but they had rescheduled so many times, and if they picked a date that I was already scheduled on, I wanted to honor their deposit. I wanted to honor, um, their date for them. So I was just very honest and said, "Listen, we're gonna have different teams, and um, the system worked really well. We used, I still oversaw everything, but using different teams for different deliveries based on like how big they were. Obviously, if there's a really big wedding, I was going to be there. But even even the other smaller ones, like I'm just really blessed to have a team of such like passionate and hardworking girls that um, they saw the vision just as much as I did. I didn't have to worry about them like not being able to nail it. So
Definitely.
kind of,
I want to add to that a bit too, because for myself, during COVID, there was that year where everything got shifted from 2020 to 2021, and all my dates filled up so quickly that I then needed to start like promoting my second shooters to associate photographers. And had I not been like ingenuitive to think, this is something I need to do moving forward, I wouldn't have a team of photographers underneath me now, that I now have a model that, supports a bigger business and provides more for my family, and not only for my family, for these other families that I'm able to provide more work for, photographers who may not have a big enough name for themselves yet. So it's definitely cool to have that change where we took something bad that happened to the industry and it created something great for our businesses and the lives of those who get to work with us.
yeah.
So one thing I want to kind of bring back to, because you were talking about just like invoices with customers and different things, were there times where just to make things like work for the customers, did you kind of just like break even on certain weddings because costs had changed and you didn't want to like put that burden on your customers?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I say all the time, like I'm not like the biggest business person. I mean, I've learned a lot, don't get me wrong, but when it comes down to especially during COVID, I broke even a lot because I just didn't want to. I mean, and I'll be honest, like I'm on like wedding pages on Facebook and stuff, and I was just seeing certain vendors being ripped apart for like changing their contracts or changing prices. And I saw it from both sides and I completely understood why they were changing prices. And in certain instances, I mean, I did have a lawyer rewrite my contract. I had to cover my butt in certain areas. Um, but in certain instances, like I saw it from both sides and I I get so close to my clients. I never want to have them feel like we're trying to, um, take advantage of them or make them pay. And I know that the numbers looked insane because inflation for flowers was insane. Um, so yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I broke even quite a few times, but I got great reviews, and it kind of just made the business promote it even more. And I don't know. I don't look back and regret it. I know that that's probably not the best business outlook. I did what I had to do to keep. I was still building the business at this point. I didn't want to be like this new florist business that was going to be ripped apart on a Facebook page or something because I
Definitely.
redid my contract, and you know what I mean. Um, so yeah, I know that's probably not the best answer, but it's an honest one.
No, I completely get it. There were definitely situations where I had to do the same. Obviously, there were situations where I had couples that were at some point they moved their date twice and they're moving their date a third time when they could have just had the wedding on the original date. Where I was like, hey, like I've honored this for you now twice. Like we're talking 3 years after you booked. Like my pricing's changed quite a bit. I'm not asking you to jump to my full new pricing, but I am going to need a new deposit because this is like the third day. And those are certain situations, but that was like maybe one or two. I just was so thankful that like everybody that moved, I had the dates available that they
Yeah,
moved to and they worked with me. Like the one thing about my couples, which I know are the same for your couples, is they're like super loyal and they're like, hey, I want to move to the date that you have available. It's
yeah,
like you and my photographer are the only ones I care about. So I'm working with you two, and everyone else, if I have to lose deposits, like I heard that a bunch of times. And I'm pretty
yeah,
certain it's like a similar bride between you and I that like made sure you and I were available on the same date
yeah,
that she moved to,
yeah,
so that like things worked out well for her new wedding date. So um, you know, with all of that, there was a lot of learning and there was a lot of growth.
yeah.
You said at first when things were pre-COVID, pre-pandemic, you were writing things hand in paper. Did that part of your business evolved into a more robust way of keeping track of things? Like, did you move to a CRM that keeps track of all of your clients now, especially with you having a team of multiple people out, or do you still have it more of like a more simplified method for tracking couples and clients and things like that?
Yeah, good question. As far as the team, Google Docs has worked really well for us to all be able to like edit one proposal or check one vision board, kind of all connect on Google Docs. So I use that a lot. But just like in terms of business and I guess I don't know, I'm still kind of a pen and paper girl besides Google Docs. And it's funny, I know that like there's so many different tools out there and I should probably check them out. Like I know that you use HoneyBook and I always get your recommendations from there. I don't use
Yeah.
HoneyBook. I don't use the Knot. I don't use Wedding Wire. I don't use any of those. I'm just like I don't know. I guess not the most technically technically I haven't evolved technically.
Yeah, I remember I was even asking you about if you had earpods to like use
I
for
don't have
headphones and
AirPods.
mics.
Yeah.
Well, that's good for you though. Less brain radiation for you while I sit here with mine charging right in front of me, right? But what would you say are some other key lessons that you learned during this experience, and how have those lessons influenced your business growth and evolution?
Yeah. So I guess I mean, like you were saying before, with growing into bigger teams, it has made me really happy to see how the business can not only provide more for myself and my family, but for my teammates. And um, I'm not turning away clients anymore. I think one of my biggest like issues post COVID and the business grew, we're back to solid ground. But my issue now was I was turning away so many clients because I was already
Hmm.
booked. But I was like, hey, wait, I don't have to do this. I can still use the teams that I was using during COVID. Now it's not as stressful. Now I actually feel like I have a good system and a good handle for it. Um, and this is giving my girls more hours. It's giving the business more income. It's not turning away clients. So that was one of the biggest things that I grew in. I think it was really hard for me to kind of I'm just such a like I want to have control of a lot when it comes to the business. It's my baby. So I think it took me a while to kind of learn to let other people wear different hats and not just try to wear every hat myself. Um, so yeah, that was super helpful and just like not even flower related, just business related. Using an accountant more often and just for things because I like I said I'm not the biggest business person. I didn't go to business school. I had a lot to learn when it comes to running a business and dealing with taxes and permits and like all those things. Um, so yeah, I guess making time to to expand in those ways and trust the team and trust the process because it's been years of building. So I'm like, okay, I can finally kind of put uh, put my trust in other people. Still, like I said, oversee everything. It's not like I'm off in Florida saying, "Hey, run the business for me."
Yeah.
um, it's just a lot easier this way, and it's a way that we've grown tremendously. Even just we've expanded. We've been doing a lot more workshops, and this was something that I've always wanted to do. A lot of people said, like, Katie, like, why don't you do more workshops? And personally, I was like, if I have a weekend off that I don't have a wedding, I don't really want to be planning a workshop. But then I was like,
Yeah.
wait a second, like Lexi, one of the she's been with me from the very beginning. She's amazing, and she's so great at planning these workshops. I was like, Lexi can plan the workshops. I don't have to plan the workshops, and I can still be
Yeah.
there for the workshops. I can still interact with the clients and help them design, but I don't have to have that extra, um, extra stress on, I guess, of thinking of every single detail for the workshop because it's just like weddings. You have to order a couple weeks in advance. You have to make sure we have all the vases. You have to advertise. You have to,
Yeah.
put a lot of time in. So, um, yeah, it's been really nice to kind of see how far along the girls have come. Lexi, Katrina, Madison, they're all just incredible. So I'm really fortunate for them and all their hard work.
That's awesome. Yeah, you must be missing Maddie with her big trip this summer. But the
Yeah.
great thing that I feel about 2020 that taught me was like how important time with family is, and it speaks to what you have created with your team. Because, like you said, you don't have to spend the time to plan the workshop, you can, pay Lexi to plan the workshop, and that now gives you more free time to spend time with the people that you love. And that's not to take away from her time that she has with the people, but you're the business runner. You never have an off switch. So to have some
Yeah,
downtime, to be able to spend time with your family, spend time with your loved ones, spend time with friends, you have that ability now because you've got a system that came out of the desperation of the time. And now that we're
yeah,
in a time of more ease, so to say, you're able to take that model and still apply it and have more freedom in your life, which is one of the things that I'm thankful for, to have people now that I can kind of delegate, some weddings. Like I don't do Sunday weddings anymore just because that's
mhm,
family day. So I can
yeah,
say, hey, you don't have to go elsewhere. You could still work with me in planning your wedding, getting the perfect timeline for your wedding day. I could have my photographers capture it and it would still all be edited by me. I just
yeah,
get to spend time with my family now on that Sunday rather than being at weddings. So it's
absolutely. And sorry
go
to cut
ahead.
you off.
No, no, go
I
ahead.
just no, because I think that that's so important, and I wish I knew that, years ago. Because I'll be honest, like I started not liking my job so much when I was just getting burnt out and I was working, working, working. I wasn't having a minute for my family or friends or myself. I like zero self care. Like I was just running on empty, and I feel like I'm such a better boss, a better designer, a better just everything when I get a day or two to kind of, like you said, we own the business. We're never completely gone. Even on my days off, I'm still doing emails. I'm still, um, of course, gardening, but being in the garden and being outside, anything that has to do with like that side of the business is very refreshing for me. It's where I kind of like get balance and a new perspective and gives me kind of time to be chill and um, yeah, I that's just me though. Like I love being outside. I know that's not everybody, um, but yeah, I just think that I wish I knew that years ago because I was just getting so burnt out, and
Yeah.
it's just it's not good when you're burnt out. You're just cranky and it's not good. Like I have time to like meal prep now, and I'm like I used to just not even bring food to work. I was just starving all day because I was like, "Oh, I can't take a lunch break. I have to get this done."
Yeah, I completely hear that. One thing I try not to sacrifice is my exercise time, and like make it's just now I have time to be able to like go and do swim lessons with my kids. Whereas prior to COVID, I was still working a full time job and running my business at a full time capacity, trying to figure out how I could like generate enough income so that I could join my wife with not being at work anymore.
Yeah.
So now it's like, okay, Thursday mornings, like I don't have to be anywhere because I create my schedule and I get to be at swim lessons with my daughters. And Wednesdays
Awesome.
are like family fun days. So I try, like I said, I try not to do like sitting down editing work, but there's emails that need to be kept up with, social media that needs to be
Yeah.
kept with. So all of those things come together, but it definitely gives us a better balance in what we do when we can delegate other things to other people. So, based on your experiences of what you went through, is there any advice that you would give to other florists who, may be facing similar challenges? Maybe they're post pandemic, but they're still dealing with the fact that wholesalers are still dealing with, issues with transportation and still 4 or 5, 6 weeks out to get things delivered compared to the 2 weeks that it used to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely recommend getting a system that works for you. My system probably isn't for everyone, but I have a pen and paper. I have my actual schedule. It's right here actually, and I just write everything down. Like if I need to put something a couple weeks in advance, I just put order these flowers or order Gabrielle's flower, like whatever it might be. I write it down, and then once I do it, I check it off, and that has helped me so much. And I know it might not work for everyone, but if just like the relief of like checking something off my list too is the best feeling. I would definitely also recommend not having one wholesaler, not having two wholesalers, having like three or four accounts with um, local people. I know that we're really fortunate here on the South Coast. I feel like we have a lot of great wholesale companies around here. If you're not somewhere where you can actually pick them up or get them delivered by truck, I know that even the Floral Reserve, they ship their flowers. So that's a really great place to source because, like I said earlier, she's not only getting flowers in from overseas. She's really focusing on like local flowers, and she uses a lot of local flower farms around here. I actually came full circle because I used to work on a lot of those farms, and I used to deliver to the floral reserve, and now I'm picking up flowers from the floral reserve for my own events. Um, so yeah, I think that's super important. Just keeping a system, keeping a schedule. Um, I have at my desk, I just have like a piece of paper with I do it in like April. I write down every single event, whether it's a big wedding or just a baby shower or just someone ordered something for a bouquet. I write every single one down and put a little box next to it. And once I order those flowers, order those vases, I just check it off. And
Nice.
yeah, and it feels good to like slowly go through the list and get through another season. Um, I do try to order all my vases and any like materials that I'm renting out. I try to get those in during the winter time because um, I noticed, especially after COVID, it didn't really go back to normal. A lot of supplies still take a while to come in. Even if they don't, I'd rather just have them in advance. I just label them, I put them in storage, and when it comes to wedding week, get them out and start working with it.
Nice. Awesome. So to kind of wrap things all up, are there anything is there anything that you're working on right now for the future that is different than what you're doing now for Homegrown Blooms, or is it still like, just keep serving wedding couples, serving your your I think you have seasonal CSAs that you have. Do you have any like future plans of anything that you're trying to add on to the company or
Yeah, definitely. I haven't really shared this with anyone yet, so I'm excited to tell you about it. Um, we're slowly moving we're slowly starting to get back to our roots, like I said before. We have 2 greenhouses in Tiverton, and we're growing a lot more on the farm here. Just personally, this is the farm where my horse lives. My This is
nice?
where, yeah, it's more where I can apply all these sustainable agriculture techniques that I learned, throughout my whole childhood and college experience, everything. Um, to put it in full circle, you really have to be, well, you don't have to be, but it's a lot easier if you're on a farm. So, just for a quick example, there's several cows, horses, a donkey, ducks. There's all kinds of animals here. So, using their poop for the soil is going to help the soil health. It's going to help the nutrients, and it's going to work it in a way that is sustainable and doesn't compromise the land. And then in return, we're going to take all of our compost from the flowers and put that back into the soil. The animals can eat it sometimes. It just works in this really, really good system. Um, and just for my clients and customers, I really want to create an environment where people feel, happy and they can pet the animals. And I'm looking forward to hopefully hosting more workshops here as we build more. The garden is slowly coming along. We just put together an outdoor spa area. We used like this old cast iron bathtub, put it on the side of the garden, put a bunch of like solar powered lights, and um, I mean, it's gonna take a while to get everything built and get the gardens exactly where I see the vision, but hopefully it's going to be a very inviting space that clients can come and enjoy the animals, enjoy the flowers,
Nice.
maybe pick your own stuff in the future. Definitely workshops here. Um, so yeah, we're excited about that.
That's awesome. So
And
you bought a farm or that?
no, this is my boyfriend's farm.
Okay.
So yeah, so this is where, um, like I said, I keep my horse. I'm here, you know, most of the week. But when I'm not at work, I'm here. Um,
Nice.
so yeah, I've been putting a lot of work into the gardens here, and my boyfriend's great because he's helped me build, the raised beds and build the arbors and build the greenhouses. And he's super supportive, and we he does more of the horse stuff here. Obviously, he actually rents out barns um for boarders to bring their horses, which is why I came
Nice.
here. And yeah, so he's doing the horse thing, I'm doing the flower farm thing, but it's kind of coming together as a really nice, like peaceful farm spot that a lot of fun stuff is happening at.
Awesome. So could you ever see like headquarters like moving to the farm, or are you going to still always keep the like your shop front that you have?
So I mean, I went into this like hoping for a family farm atmosphere. Like, I want to have a family one day that I can strap my kids on my back and just harvest the flowers and
Yeah.
like from like my, watch the flowers from my front porch.
Traditional
So
homesteading kind of
exactly, yeah,
lifestyle.
exactly. That's what I've always wanted, and it's crazy because I didn't ever think it was really going to happen. I didn't come from like a farm family. I grew up working on farms, but I just saw how expensive land was and how it just seemed like unachievable, and I don't know. Everything's been working out. I didn't expect it to work out this way, but I'm really really excited and really fortunate, and like I said, just really blessed that my boyfriend's been such a great support system and um encouraging. And a lot of people thought my ideas, especially growing up, like so many people thought my ideas were just crazy. And
Whimsical thinking kind of
yes,
ideas.
and I know that they are. I'm a very whimsical like I'm just such a romantic thinker. I mean, I've just put a freaking spa in the garden, but like I love it, and
Yeah,
other people love it, and it's something that it's I don't know, it's something I'm passionate and makes me happy, so I'm just gonna keep
that's
doing it.
awesome. Your passion speaks through your work, so I definitely don't see any lack of passion in you and in the endeavors that you have. So I'm so glad for everything that's happening and everything that I know is going to happen for you at Homegrown. So, uh, before we go, I would love for you to be able to give the listeners a place where they can find you, whether it's social media or your website.
Yeah, definitely. Our website is homegrownblooms.org. There's kind of like my story about me, everything that I just said on there. There's a spot that you can order flowers for pickup or delivery. There's a whole wedding page and reviews and all the fun wedding stuff on there. There's also a blog that I try to keep up with as often as possible. And then our Instagram page is Instagram and Facebook, I guess, is where we're posting like weekly updates of our weddings and events, our workshops, our CSA. Our spring CSA just ended for the season, but our summer and fall, well, our summer will be starting next week, and then our fall will be starting in the end of August. So we're excited because we're growing a lot of cool stuff this year, and excited to share all that, through social media. So definitely check in there if you like to see pretty flowers and occasionally some horses or donkey, cow. Yeah,
Awesome.
that's where you can find us.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you sharing. And as I do at the end of every one of these podcasts, it's a shameless plug for my mentoring program, Pathway to Full-Time Photography. If you're a photographer or you know a photographer that's looking to expand their business, I have a course with a mentorship that goes along with it. And I'd love to get you some more information. And you can find all of that at my website or in the description down below. But again, I want to thank Cady for joining me today and sharing her experience through the pandemic and post. And I look forward to seeing each and every one of you guys in the next episode. Take it easy.